We need to organize, and we need to set up a blueprint as the masses, which will eventually lead us to the conditions of power. So unity, organization, and the building of institutions, these are the key things that we need to do to eventually embark in that condition where we have the power to make our voice understood by the leading class, and most importantly, not just make our voice understood by being in the position or putting ourselves as well in the position where we do for ourselves what other people have been pretending for us. So,
hello and welcome to Self-Upgrade. So today I have a treat for you. New generation of Africans who don't want things to continue the way they used to be with our forefathers, with people like Ibrahim Traore and all of the iOS, states. We see a change. A change is happening. It gives us hope to see that, actually people are waking. It's not just a few people, but there's a mass awakening of Africans. And today we have a brother, and he's going actually to share some wisdom. Let's welcome him to the podcast, and maybe he can tell us a little bit more about who he is. So first of all, Kabala, how are you today?
I'm good, Queen, and I'm happy to be on your show today. And I say greetings, my revolutionary greetings to all African people out there, those who are in Africa, those who are abroad, and of course, those who are still coming in the future. Thank you so much.
Amazing. I'm so excited about this today. I can barely hide it. Because, when I read your book, like the latest, because Kabala is an author, 3 books, and we're going to talk about them today. So when I saw the latest book and its content, I was like, oh my goodness, people need to hear about this. Because we as Africans, those ideas have to come from us. We've had enough of ideas coming from the outside, from people coming and telling us how we should live. Nowadays, like right now, our youth are taking things into their own hands. And Kabala here has, written books that awaken the new generation of Africans. Please, could you tell us about yourself and the work that you do, basically?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, Queen. Thank you once again. So Kabala is born in the colonial enclosure that we call the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I am currently speaking to you from South Africa. So my background, educational wise, I have a background in engineering studies, precisely mechanical engineering. I also have a background in community development studies, and currently in development studies. So I'm an author of 3 books already. My first book was The Expropriation of the Mind Without Compensation. My second book was What Time Is It? The Question to the African Millennials. And the recently published book, which is The Commerce of Trust. So I do work currently with some social organizations such as the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, where I do train young leaders for the better future of Africa. Literally train the young future leaders of Africa, because we believe that one of the challenges that Africa is facing today is due to the lack of capacity in the leadership, precisely in the area of business management as well as political leadership, because we consider our countries as a business entities by which at the end of every year we need to declare profits. And many of our leaders who are in the key positions, they don't have competency in the business leadership. Some of them they do, but when they have competence in business leadership, they don't have competence in political leadership. Therefore, we designed a program to train leaders who can be competent in both business and political leadership, which we conceive to be the right and left, leg of every human being to be able to walk in balance. So apart from that, I'm also working with the African Continental Unity Party, which is a political movement, a global political movement, Pan-African movement, where I am heading the communication department. And apart from that, on individual capacity, I am a consultant. I'm working, with a consultant firm in, on scientific research as well as business development, precisely in the Congo. Yeah, that's all I can say about myself. Should you have more question, I'll be glad to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really excited about everything that you said there. All the areas that you are specializing, or you specialized yourself, because development is definitely something that we are lacking in Africa, and something that we need. Like you said, we need to develop business leaders, but also we need to develop political leaders, community leaders, people who understand what it means to lead others. Because currently, like the people that most of the leaders that we have, as presidents, they don't seem to understand that leading a country is not actually just coming and enriching yourself and your families. So, I'm really excited that you're doing that. And, I really hope that some people will get in touch, some people, because I'm sure that there are people out there who are trying to learn those skills. So I hope that, if you guys are watching and you feel like, okay, I have, I'd like to learn more, either on how I can become a better businessman, or a business person, or a better leader. You never know. You never know. Just get in touch with Kabala, and he may be able to to help you there. So, Kabbalah, I understood that you are also a member of the African Continental Unity Party. So, could you tell us a little bit about that, a little bit more? Because you already mentioned that it's a Pan-African party, and even the name actually is quite self-explanatory. But it will be nice for you to just, develop a little bit about the party and what you do exactly.
No, beautiful. So ACUP is, as I called it, African Continental Unity Party. It's a new initiative. Now, this is an initiative by African masses. The reason why I'm highlighting that is because most of the initiatives that we have had since the post-independence period in Africa have been initiatives that were created by the elite class, the so-called leaders. They will come to our communities. They will come and tell us that we need to do this, we need to do that, so that we can change your conditions. We are coming to help you, to serve you, all those kind of things. And we go and elect them. But for over 60 years, in most cases in Africa, we realize that the conditions within our communities don't change. And it's most likely going to be the case for the rest of this century if something fundamentally does not change. And what I'm trying to say by that is that our current states, our colonial states in Africa today, are not capable of resolving many of our fundamental issues in our communities, whether that is regarding unemployment or hunger, social development, education, all those kind of things. So it came to our mind that it is maybe a time that we need to go deep into ourselves as a communities of African people, of common people, to see what can we come up with, what can we initiate as the masses to at least try to solve our problems. And the guideline or the blueprint has been already there, laid down by Marcus Garvey, by Kwame Nkrumah, by Patrice Lumumba, by Thomas Sankara, by all these leaders that were fought against and sometimes destroyed by the Western imperialism. The guidelines that they have set down was to unite African people globally, of course, in order to liberate Africa through scientific means. And that in itself is called pan-Africanism. So we came up with this initiative of the masses, which is inspired by the masses, which is the common people, all of us, African people in the diaspora and on the continent, to solve the problem of the masses. So that is basically what the ACP is. So the vision that we have is to rebuild Africa as a global power base. And the reason for that is we realize in the world today, most of the things that we see in the world are maneuvered by power. In other words, the world is not governed really by democracy, even though Westerners will come to Africa and confuse us that we need to fight for democracy. And we see young people, young kid in Africa marching on the streets being gunned down because they were dying or they were fighting for democracy. We believe that the world is governed by power. And power is the only thing that defines reality in the world today. And that's even the reason why we talk about developed countries and underdeveloped countries. What differentiates them is simply because some are powerful, therefore they are developed. Others are powerless, therefore they are underdeveloped. So for Africa to escape the underdevelopment condition in which we are living today, we need to acquire power. And that way to acquire that power requires that firstly we need to unite, we need to organize, and we need to set up a blueprint as the masses, which will eventually lead us to the conditions of power. So unity, organization, and the building of institutions, these are the key things that we need to do to eventually embark in that condition where we have the power to make our voice understood by the leading class, and most importantly, not just make our voice understood by being in the position or putting ourselves as well in the position where we do for ourselves what other people have been pretending for us. So in that sense, ACP wants to train, as I actually hinted from the beginning, want to train the new class of leaders, and not just to train them, but to promote them in the key positions in Africa or in our governance institutions, so that tomorrow, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, is no longer going to be just an agenda of YouTube discussion or of social media discussion, but the Pan-Africanism has to be in the power, so that instead of discussing Pan-Africanism, we actually have Pan-Africanists in power, and they can just implement what we want to see in Africa, the unity agenda that we want to see in Africa. They can implement it, because what we do now as Pan-Africanists, we are being sidelined. We don't have power. We are outside of the power dynamics. We have a few people that we can look into as a Pan-Africanist in power now, like a Traoré captain in Burkina Faso. I think Assimi Goïta in Mali, and I think General Chani in Niger. Well, but it's not enough. We're talking about 3 out of 54 countries. So we need more Pan-Africanists into powerful positions, so that we don't march for Pan-Africanism, or we don't just discuss on TikTok and Facebook or YouTube, but we are actually having people in power to amend the policy according to Pan-Africanism ideology, and also to manage the implementation of those policies. And that is how we are able to move Africa from where it is now to where it's supposed to be. So in a nutshell, that is what ACP want to do. The vision is to build or to rebuild Africa as a global power base, and the mission is to train, to develop new leaders, and to promote them into the position of power, so that they can eventually begin to do, or we can begin to do for ourselves, what we have been waiting for other people to do for us.
That's music to my ear. Music to my ear, because that's like you said, we definitely need that. And which stage are you at? Have you already started to implement your strategy, or you are on the preparation stage? So have you already started training people, basically?
Yes. So currently we are at the stage of mobilization and organization. So by organization, I mean also training, preparing people for leadership roles. So we have mobilized across Africa. We are in most of English-speaking countries, as well as in some of the French-speaking countries. And particularly in Ghana, we have, for example, we have transformed the movement, because ACP currently is like a movement. Globally speaking, we work as a movement, organizing or mobilizing people as a movement. And the aim is to transform this movement in every African country where we settle, to transform it into a political party. And we are at that stage already in Ghana. We have secured the certificates, official certificate as a political party. And we are actually putting in place all the strategies and means by which we'll be able to participate into the upcoming elections in 2028 in Ghana. We are having the same strategy in Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and we are looking into begin the same work as well in the DRC. But when it comes to mobilization, we have mobilized across Africa, and we have members almost in every countries. And the training as well, of course, we are doing that within the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy. So, yeah, it's a difficult task, not really the easy one, because we know what Pan-Africanism represents for the Western imperialism. And that is the reason why all the leaders that have come in the past in the name of Pan-Africanism, they were fought against viciously. The like of Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, the list is really endless. So, but we are ready for that, and we learn from the past, and we adopt certain strategies that can eventually help us to avoid the chaos of the past and make sure that in this 21st century, Pan-Africanism really succeed to derail Africa from the current roots towards destruction and to put it in the roots towards reconstruction, power, emancipation, and self-reliance. All those are very important for the survival of African people, of African race beyond the 21st century.
Definitely. So, that's a very exciting and noble cause. And I'm sure that's many people who will hear about that, because I was not aware of that party. I consider myself a Pan-African. Obviously, we are Africans, so we can only be for whatever, strategy is going to help to develop Africa. So if there are people who are listening to us or watching us and hearing this, and if, for instance, they want to get involved to help or to be part of the party, how can they do this?
Yes. So let me just make one comment on what you said. You didn't know about this, but you are yourself a Pan-Africanist. I think many people do consider themselves as Pan-Africanists, but I think for you to be able to truly believe and consider and look at yourself as a Pan-Africanist, you need to be part of an organization, because there's no way to talk about Pan-Africanism if you are just alone, because the main idea of Pan-Africanism is unity, organization, collaboration with other, same-minded people. So we have many people who are Pan-Africanists, but they don't function within a particular organization. And that's a problem. So I think the call here is to invite every African person from wherever they are. If you are Pan-Africanist, you have to find an organization. Find organization in your community through which you can contribute, you can work to make sure that we advance the ideas of African liberation and emancipation, because that is the aim of Pan-Africanism, is to liberate Africa. It's not just to wear traditional attire when it comes an African day, or occasionally, Pan-Africanism is an agenda, is a work that we need to do on consistent basis, because it aims at rebuilding Africa. And when you talk about rebuilding, you need to really work. It's not just once a year you or posting or liking a post on a social media. It's about really being involved. So how people can get a hold of us? I think we have a website which is www.africanacup.org. So people can find all the information right there. And should people want to have a direct line to have more information, they can contact me. I think maybe you have my number. If it's okay, you can publish my number. It's not a problem. It's a public number. It's
Okay.
everywhere on our website and everywhere. Yeah. So people can reach out to me to get more information, and I'm dealing with the communication anyway. So that's my job. Yeah.
Okay, so I will just add the link to the website within the description, and your mobile number as well, so that people can contact you easily. And yeah, I do believe that what you said there is really, is very true. We have to be part of a certain organization, that is aiming to help to develop Africa. But nowadays, for instance, if I wasn't aware that this particular party exists, it's difficult for me, like, to do anything. I need to be aware that, okay, there's this organization and I can join it because we share the same ideas. So today, if anyone is watching and you are not aware, about the party either, so, just go to the website, and you can also contact Kabala, as he said. And this is very exciting, just us sitting here already, having this type of discussions, talking about an organization, an existing organization that is there and which is aiming basically to unite Africa. This is like, just visualizing it is just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I'm definitely going to find out more after the podcast. So Kabbalah, I'll ask you about it again. But for now, let's talk about your books, because in the introduction, you mentioned the 3 books that you wrote so far. So can you summarize the first 2 just to tell us, what you're talking about in those 2, and then we'll focus a little bit more, on the third one.
Yes, so I think the first one, the expropriation of the mind without compensation, I think it was triggered by a Tony issue in South Africa. If you know the reality in South Africa, you will understand what I'm talking about. So basically, in South Africa, you have a situation where 81% of the population who are black in South Africa only possess like 11% of the land in South Africa. Then 19% of the population in South Africa, who is white population, control about 89% of the land space in South Africa. So there has been an ongoing discussion about expropriating the land without compensation. I mean, that has been the main agenda of some organizations such as the EFF in South Africa. They've been pushing for expropriation of the land without compensation. So I took that baseline to project it on another aspect of our lives. Because my understanding of life is everything begins with the mind before the reality can be manifested physically. So in other words, I do conceive that the creator of human being created us to function on a formula, just like anything, any design, any laptop function based on a formula or code, like this laptop or software that we are using to interact is working with a certain code, or so that's the same as us human being. We are designed to function on a particular formula, and for me that formula implies or means simply, I call it, at least on my from my perspective, I do call it thought to action formula, or head to hands formula. So it simply means that before you can engage your hands to do something, to work on something, or before you can put yourself on certain actions, you have to engage your mind to create that whatever action that you want to do, or that reality that you want. And then your hands will be able to jump and materialize that idea. That's a formula through which we are created, all of us. However, many of us try to escape the first part of engaging our head or our thought in creating our reality, and move ahead with our hands to work on actions. Now, those are the actions that have been created by other people's mind. And when you put yourself to work on something that has been created by somebody else's mind, you are more contributing to that person's vision, that person's purpose of life, than to your own purpose of life. You see, you may be getting some money out of that to survive, to buy yourself a car. But at the end of the time, at the end of the day, you would find yourself a person who has lived a life, empty life, which has not led to any purpose. And in that case, you might be less important than a cow, because, a cow has a purpose. Even if it doesn't build roads and stuff, but when it dies, at least we can eat it. But as a human being, you can drive in a car, do all those things. But if you have not fulfilled a purpose, a particular purpose that comes from your creation, your mind, your thoughts, then you have lived an empty life. So it was from that perspective that I wrote that book. How do we expropriate our mind? And you don't have to pay anybody for you to use your mind. That's the second part of without compensation. You don't have to pay anybody to think. That's actually what I wanted to say. We wake up in every morning with unlimited power. And that is the power to think about anything that we want in life. And scientists will say that there are like 50,000 thoughts crossing our minds every day. And every problem in life can only be resolved through the process of question and answers. And that means the process of thinking. All things that we have in life have come from ideas, idea from people, the cameras that I'm using, the car, the aeroplane, all these things were injected in people's ideas. So us as African people, we are rushing more for material things that have been created by other people's ideas, and we neglect our own capacity to think and to create our own reality. So that was actually the basic line about that first book. So the second one, which was just a simple reminder to the African people, a simple question to the African people of the essence of the time at which we are. It was during the COVID-19. I was going through the internet to see what are the major problems that are facing the world today. And from that, I came up with the question, what time is it for us as African people? Because time dictates the agency that people have. Time dictates actions of the people. So by understanding at what time we are, we will be at the same time able to understand what is the essence of our life today, and most importantly, what are the actions that we can do today to maybe improve our situation if the time is not right, or to look for different way of life. If we find ourselves the time at which we are living today does not give us what we want out of this life. So it was just a kind of creating a book that was aimed at creating an awareness among the young African people. Hence the book, the second title was The Question to the African Millennials, to realize that we are at the crossroad we have to choose, at which we have to choose carefully, and be decisive. There's no time to waste, we don't have a better future out of the 21st century if we don't change the status quo today in Africa. And based on what Frantz Fanon said, that every generation must discover its mission and fulfill it or betray it, I had to write that book just to remind the African child at what time we are, or maybe to put it as a question for people to think for themselves. And from there, we can trigger a certain line of actions different from what we have today, such as TikTok discussions or distraction, seeing people naked here and there, thinking that this is what is right to do. But really, what time is it today? What can we do to change our reality? I think that was the part of that was the main discussion there for that two previous books.
Wow. Wow. You have to send me the links to all your books. So I haven't finished reading The Commerce of Trust, but the bits that I have read so far, oh my goodness, so powerful. Anyway, you can tell from, his explanation and or everything that he said there, everything that you said there, Kabala, just makes me feel like, going and getting those two as well. Because like you said, everything, like, what time is it for Africa? That's a very fair question to ask ourselves, because we are looking at our world and the world is changing. The world is changing. People are seeing things differently. But what does that mean for us as young Africans? What should we do? Because, things are changing for others. But for us, we're looking and we tend to have the same reality. Like Africa is still underdeveloped, and we don't seem to have the right people in place to facilitate, the development of our continent. So what time is it? It's time to move things. Uh, that's one answer. Obviously, it's not Kabbalah's, but I'm
You're
sure
right.
that it goes.
Yeah.
It goes in that sense. So I have to read that book, and thank you so much for taking the time to explain, the depth of the content, because those are, like I said, very important questions and very important things for us to think. We can't just sit here, like you said, watching, listening to Afrobeat and rumba and dance, while the world basically we are here, like you said, we all have a mission. We didn't just come here like this. Why are we here at this very time? Why? Why are we here? Why am I here? I need to find out. And if everybody is asking themselves that same question, I think something will move. Something will happen. So, thank you very much for reminding us that, Kabbalah. Then I want us to focus on the third book, The Commerce of Trust. Can you just explain or summarize very quickly what this one is about, please?
Yes, great. So this one, I had to jump outside of political discussion just to talk about our social reality as African people. And looking at the world today, uh, I consider trust to be the most uh, important asset that one can build for his life, or that people can build for strong community to exist. So, talking now from community level, firstly, I look at the trust to be the key differentiator between our community as African community and other people's communities, such as Jewish community, Indian community, whatever they are. You will see that trust is what actually define what they have in the world today as success, in a sense that people are willing to embrace each other with their ideas and their mistakes, um, and support each other and move forward. Why? Because what actually builds a community is a trust. So when we talk of ourselves, like, let's say, for example, like Congolese, I don't know how many things define us as a Congolese, except maybe the money that we use, the culture that we use, and those things exist simply because we trust in them. If you go with Congolese money to like Kenya, people won't buy it with that money, even though they may know it. Why? Because people don't trust that this is the currency. It simply means that a society, a community can function, can thrive if people have built mutual trust among themselves. And that is what we see when we see Indian communities, Chinese communities, and even Jewish communities. People have been able to build trust among themselves, which allow the societies or communities to thrive. But with us, we're still having to learn how to trust, firstly, ourselves as individuals, to trust our ideas, and to move forward to trust, our fellow Africans or community members or, even family members. And the book was just aiming to help us to discover the importance of trust, how trust is the key to our success as a community, and how we can go about building trust, within us and between us as a people. And at the individual level, I look at a trust as the most important asset that we buy in the market. It's not even the things that we are buying, especially today, because you go to the supermarket, you find two shops selling the same item, like a bread, for example, but you will find the people uh, always going to a particular shop. If you ask and buy the same thing anyway, if you ask them why do they choose this shop than the other shop and discuss, you come to the bottom line that points to trust, because they trust that particular shop than the other. And and today we are living in the world where knowledge is everywhere, because some years ago people relied on knowledge and capability to produce higher product or service, or high quality products or better service than their competitors to be able to succeed in a market. But that is no longer true today, because you get skills everywhere, you get expertise everywhere of different forms, you get best products everywhere, you get best service everywhere. So what can make you as an individual, as maybe entrepreneur, or I don't know, whoever you want to become in life, what can make you successful is simply trust. It depends on how many people are able to trust your story. So we meet people on street every day. I don't know, hundreds, 50, depends on how you move every day. So I used to think, if only maybe half of the people, like for instance, on your phone, sorry, if half of your contacts can trust you to the point where if you come up with a product, they don't even question, they just buy. You've come up with an idea, they just support you. How much successful will you be? So I think when we look at our limitations today, when we look at our predicaments today, our setbacks, I don't know, uh, no matter what they are, when we study them properly, we'll just realize that it's because of trust. At some point, people didn't trust us. That's why we didn't get a job that we wanted. We didn't get a partner that we wanted because they didn't trust us. We didn't, everything's boiled down to trust. So trust is very important. So that book was just about it. How to firstly understand trust and understand how trust make the society or the world moving around. Like you in the UK, you have your every year, I mean, twice per year, you have your clock set back, I think in March, and set forward again somewhere around April. And it changes the whole society. Why? People believe that it doesn't change the position of the sun. It doesn't change the position of the moon. It's just people believe that this is what it is, and the society functions like that. So trust is everything. So that was actually the book that I wrote. And yeah, as I explained, especially looking at us African communities worldwide, wherever we are, in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, trust is really our biggest challenge. We are unable to trust ourselves and to trust, our fellow Africans. And that's the reason why we don't seem to succeed. And if we want to succeed, we we locate the success into other people's communities, and forgetting that they build trust. For those communities to be successful, they had to work. They had to go beyond um, criticism. They had to go beyond stereotype. They had to go beyond all kind of prejudices so that they can build a society that functions based on trust. So that's all about that book. So we've got a lot of chapters. I think it's about 16 chapters, if I'm not mistaken. So each chapter explains trust in different contexts, and at the end of it, I had to then delve into a kind of a development, of course, based on my passion into development studies. So I had to introduce self development as well as community development, all geared towards how we can build a strong society as African people, because that is what we need. Even the pan-Africanism thing that we're talking today, the reason why we can't unite ourselves as African people is simply because we lack trust, among us. And therefore we want to associate ourselves with the former oppressor than to associate ourselves with our fellow Africans as a people who have been formerly colonized, and build ourselves from then, and overcome the forces of neo-colonialism that are still persisting in Africa.
So powerful. So powerful. once again, we need to read these books because usually when we, like, as Africans, when we want to develop our minds, we tend to, go and read the books written by people from other communities. And like you said, trust. We need to also believe in the fact that we also have geniuses. We also have greatness within our own communities. Kabbalah
Mm.
here, for like I said, you guys haven't read the book, but I have it here, like in, digital version. And I can tell you that the book is really powerful. And I love what you're saying there because trust is really, the first step in anything. Like you said, you can't go into a relationship if you don't trust the person in front of you. You can't see yourself living with that person if you don't trust them. And unfortunately, it's the same thing in business. And many communities, they are developing their businesses, and we as Africans, we are contributing in helping to develop their communities. Because, I'm here, in the UK, and I believe that it's not only in the UK. As Africans, sometimes we have like a brave brother who will open a shop, to sell maybe food, African food or something like that. And we will leave him there and go to buy from the Chinese guy, next door. So, that's just like it's what's killing Africa. We can't develop by having such behaviors. You know that in terms of in the same way, Chinese, for instance, a Chinese person who lives in Brighton can travel all the way to Hayward's Heath to go to go to his Chinese brother's shop, but why can't we do the same? So Kabbalah, I know that obviously if we want to find out more about how to build that trust, we need to read the book. But can you just give us a few, a few points, a few aspects of how we can do that without obviously saying everything that's written in the book?
How we can build trust. So the simplest way that I can answer that question is that trust is built firstly on knowledge. So you can have a situation. I was actually doing some observations or some research before I wrote that book. You can have a situation of a person who is confident, who is self-driven, who is passionate about something, and all these things are mostly talked about as the key to success. You need to be confident, you need to be self-driven, and you need to have passion in something that you do. But you may find the people failing in life or in whatever endeavor they were settled in, even though they have all these qualities. Then then comes the question: how comes they felt even though they had trust in themselves, they had confidence, and were self-driven? So for me, the answer is that for you to be able to properly utilize trust, uh, and because from trust, then you have when you have trust in yourself, then you have confidence, then you have self-drive, you have all those things. But for you to be able to utilize trust, that trust has to be informed by some knowledge. So, for example, I can trust you to, I can trust you if you are, for example, you are a medical doctor. I can trust you with my health because I know that you have studied medicine and you are able to treat me. But I wouldn't trust you to pilot a plane for me because you don't have a pilot license. That would be a crash. So that's where everything must begin. When we want to build trust in ourselves, I think the first question has to be, why do I need to trust myself? What am I capable of? Because I think we are in a society that um, that is full of motivational speakers that can put you in a high energy, even though you don't have the basis. You can attend a conference or you can read a book and people can just inspire you, feel like, okay, tomorrow I need to become a millionaire. But what do you have, to trust, to build the trust, on? So that's where everything begins. I can trust myself to be a leader because I have an experience in leadership, and I can count on 1, 2, 3 things that I've done as a leader that makes me confident, that gives me the self-trust in myself because I know I've done it, but I cannot trust myself to be, I don't know, an architect because I didn't study architecture. I've never done it. And so that's where, firstly, that's how we go. That's the first step actually on how we can build trust, whether with ourselves or with other people. You want to trust somebody, you have to have something that you base your trust on. And trust is not, even though we speak about trust generally, but trust is not a general thing that you want to use to anybody in anyhow. You need to know people first. You need to answer to the question of why do you trust them? So I think that's the first thing to be aware of. I mean, is to build knowledge. So, and in the book I've explained properly the difference when you have a trust that is not based on knowledge, that becomes literally faith, because faith does not require you to know. People will tell you that faith is absence of knowledge. You only believe in something when you don't know about it. If you ask me, do I know God? No. But do I believe in God? I may tell you yes, because I don't know him, but I believe. So belief is just the absence of knowledge. So many people believe and confuse belief with trust. And that's the reason why in our communities in Africa, you will hear people saying that, no, I trusted those people once and I was disappointed. Oh, I will never do things with our black community anymore because I once trusted and I was disappointed. No, you had belief. Trust is not belief, because trust requires knowledge, but belief does not require knowledge. You may not know something, but just believe, and unfortunately, most of the things that we do every day, we do them based on belief because for instance, you wake up in the morning, your hubby can do a tea for you, can make a tea for you and give you the tea. You won't check the tea to see if he has put the poison in your tea or not. You just believe in it. So most of the activities that we do every day are based on belief. But when it comes to important things that can change our lives, belief is not really the option. You got to be doing based on trust. You want to do this business? Okay, you have trust in yourself. Why? Do you have expertise? You have the capital? You have, all the knowledge, all the connections that you need to succeed. So those are things that we really need to look into when we begin to build trust. But once you put yourself on that motion of trust, you realize that really trust opens doors to that you cannot really imagine without trying. And before I finish, I think trust is also a risk. It's we live in a society that tells you. I think I've emphasized this in one of the chapter. I think chapter 4, chapter 3. The society that tells you that don't care about other people, about what they think about you, because life is all about yourself. This is mostly a Western way of thinking, because we know that Western ideology is mostly based on individualism, while African ideology that we call Ubuntu or African philosophy is based on collective work or collectivism, so to say. And this is actually how the human society began. When you go back in history, this thing of individualism didn't exist. For people to survive, because we know human being was born in Africa, and the first danger that we had to face in Africa was wild animals. We were being hunted. Today we are hunters, and we don't even realize how we've been able to come to this point. But before, we used to be hunted by wild animals like nothing. And the only thing that helped us to survive during that time was our ability to build community, to come together and build community. And that implies trust as a community so that we can gather around and, light the fire at night and the wild animal will not come and attack us, and mastering the fire and be able even to master the animal, so that today we almost presenting ourselves as the masters of the nature, even though that is wrong because the nature remains the master above everything, right? So um, that is to say that the idea of individualism came with capitalism, where people will begin to think that what I'm thinking in my mind is what matters. I don't have to think about what other people think about me. But when you look at the people who make that statement, whether they succeed or they have failed with their lives, that is the result of uh, it is a result of whether people trusted them or not. So they've succeeded. If they've succeeded, it's because people trusted them. That's how they've succeeded, even though they're still thinking that what matters is what I think, not what other people think about me, right? If they failed, it's because people didn't trust them. So it is okay at some point that we need to to prioritize what we think more than what other people think. But I think if we want to build society that is, functioning on trust, we need to pay attention to what people think about us, because people are like the mirrors of who we are, and what people think about us, of course, will give us ideas on how we can put ourselves in a situation where people are able to trust us, and that is the second thing that I can emphasize. I've spoken extensively on it in the book to make more sense, but I think briefly, that's what I can say. The first thing is you need to build knowledge. The second thing is you need to pay attention to what society thinks about you. Because when you talk about trust, you are talking about the people around you. You want them to trust, starting from your family members, your community. You want them to trust you because those are the people who will make your idea successful. Those are the people who make your business successful. But you cannot understand how you can build trust with them if you don't know what they think about you. So those are the two things that can really help us in building trust.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's powerful. I love that. And I love the fact that you mentioned Ubuntu there. Because, obviously, you can have the best business, in the world. You can have the best product in the world. But if you don't have people to buy that, your product is just nothing. So I definitely agree with you. Trust, obviously you don't want to, pay, like, you don't want to let people tell you who you are or stuff like that. But when it comes to coming together, I think we all have to do some type of efforts, to belong. If you want to belong to a community, we can't, do things that go against that community. I think that's, that also joins what you were saying. So, I know that you have a lot to do, so I'm not going to keep you too long either. But I have this question. When I was going through the book, I read this very, very strong title, a statement which I know is true, but I'd like you to explain a little bit what you meant by saying this. So in chapter 11, you said, I mean, that's the title of chapter 11. You said the enemy of Africa is the African. So could you explain, please?
Yes, so actually, the content of the chapter differs from the chapter itself, but it's just that I need to put that because that's what people say out there. Many people who don't want to be part of the community, many people who don't want to do something that can improve the conditions of Africa, they will say that the enemy of Africa is the African himself. And sometimes they can be justified because they have experience of betrayal of so and so. But I think that statement is totally wrong, as I've explained in the book in on different accounts. Firstly, Um, Traitors or people who undermined others can be found in any community. Like
Mhm.
the Jewish community is the most successful community in the world, as per what people say and per what we see. But even during the Holocaust, there were Jewish people who were collaborating with Nazi to send other Jewish to the into the gas chamber, and yet you're never gonna hear a Jewish person say that the enemy of Jewish person is or the enemy of Israel is the Jewish person himself. No, they don't say that. They are people who can be overwritten because they are traitors in every community, but that cannot undermine the aspiration of that community to come together, to build a strong society, to build strong institutions on which the community can depend on. So the narrative that Africans push by saying that because we have few sellouts among us, sellouts already based on that uh, analysis, the reason of saying that the enemy of Africa is African himself because we have sellouts in Africa, it doesn't stand because sellouts are to be found in every community, in America, in Russia. Actually, during the Cold War, you had spies who were Americans but working on behalf of Russia, the same as you had Russian spies spying Russia on behalf of Americans. But still, you didn't hear any Russian saying that the enemy of Russia is Russia. Why? Because we understand this thing. I think we need also to understand this, that we have sellouts among ourselves, but we need to find those that we can trust and build with. If we step back because we have first some situations of setbacks or we have been disappointed by a few sellouts that we have among ourselves, then Africa will never gonna be built because Africa needs to be built and Africans must build it. And we need to trust each other and come together and build it. And the second reason why that statement is wrong is because if you think that the enemy of Africa or of African is an African himself, you psychologically disable your intention or your enthusiasm to work for Africa because there's no one person in their right mind who will dedicate their time, their energy, their resources to work for the enemy. There's nothing like that. So psychologically, we may not even understand it, but for the fact that we conceive that the enemy of African is an African himself, we are totally discouraged. We are automatically, uh, you know, disabled mentally to focus or to dedicate a little of our time or of our efforts to work for Africa. So, because I cannot work for my enemy, right? And that even the reason why everyone who get an opportunity in Africa, like in leadership position, they want to steal more for themselves because inside of ourselves, deep in ourselves, we don't believe to work for Africa. We don't believe that Africa can change. Once you are appointed as a minister, you want to steal as much as you want to steal and put that money in offshore banks because you are planning to go and live overseas when you are out of power. So you see, all this can be linked to that simple statement that we making every day because we know that the words that we are pronouncing every day and the thoughts that we are thinking are the same thing. So the difference is just that your thoughts are the words that you have not yet spoken, that you have not yet expressed. Same as your thoughts are the words. Sorry, as I said, the thought are the words that you haven't spoken, such as the words are the thoughts that you have expressed. So I think what we say is very important because it plays in our mind and dictates our consciousness as well as our actions. So the enemy of African is not an African. The enemy of African is the one who put Africa on the current trajectory. And of course, he always actually find some sellouts in Africa that he cooperates with to eventually further the agenda of African destruction. But for those of us who are genuine and believe in the potential of Africa, we shouldn't look at the sellouts. We just write them off, and we focus on those with whom we can build strong society, strong community, and you know, and move on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm happy that you explained it like that because I agree with you. That's, that's the narrative that the media and, everything, basically the books that we read wanted us to put in our consciousness that, the enemy of Africa is the African. Because if we think like that, it's impossible for us to come together.
Yeah.
It's impossible for us to come together.
Mhm.
And that's why when you look back at history, for instance, when you look at the killing of the assassination of Lumumba and Sankara, basically they take our brothers. Basically, they bring our brothers, and there are people behind like the CIA and any those organizations. They will be behind the killing, but obviously they won't show you that.
Yes.
They will show you your brother. This is who killed Lumumba. This is who killed Sankara. But when you do your research, when you try to find out more, that's
Mhm.
when you realize that, oh, so there's more to this than just saying that, okay, this is the guy who killed Lumumba or
Yeah.
this is the guy who killed Sankara. So I think we need to go beyond that because I know that as Africans, it's very, very sensitive topic when we talk about those big, those leaders who potentially could have saved Africa but are gone. And when we look back, we see, oh, this is like I forgot the one who supposedly killed Sankara. I forgot
Bless
the name.
Compaoré.
Yes. So when we think about the death of Sankara, that's the name that comes to mind. But behind him, who was there,
Yeah.
and what was the discussion that happened to make him make that decision, the decision of killing his own brother.
Mhm.
But yeah, last time I was reading something about Lumumba, and I actually read, the speech that he made during the day, like the Independence Day, and I,
Mhm.
I swear I was in tears. I was in tears because I was like, this is a man who had an agenda. This is a man who was coming to free the heart of Africa, and look what they did to him. And when you think like that, it's easy to be like, oh, the enemy of Africa, it's the African. But
Mhm.
that, like I said, in any community, you can find those people who are ready to kill even their own brother to get in power. You can find those. It's not only in Africa, but because of the image that they want to put in our heads of ourselves, because they don't want us like to develop our own image to be like, this is who we are, because we have
Yeah.
greatness, we have a great people. When you look back at our history, you find greatness, our true history, you
Mhm.
find greatness, but they just want us to remember slavery. That's the type of history of Africa they want us to remember. So
Yes.
like I said, it's very important for us to go beyond that and to be aware that we are human beings. And as humans, we have flaws. Some, in some people, they are more developed than others. Some people will be willing to kill anyone you want for them to get in power. But in humanity, Africa is mainly defined by Ubuntu. I am
Mhm.
because you are. The brotherhood that we show to we our ancestors, and even today in certain communities we still have kept that, the sense of brotherhood. My son is not only the one who came, from my, like, it's not only the one that I brought to life. My son is also my neighbor's son.
Yes.
Anyone that can potentially be my son, I should view them as such. And if
Mhm.
we go back to those roots, to our traditions, to our values, I think the trust that that you mentioned is so important for us to develop will come, for itself. So, Kabbalah, thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your time, for taking the time today to, share all those great ideas. And once again, if you're watching this or if you are listening to this, please go and get those books. Buy Kabbalah's books so that you as well can understand what we're talking about here today. Because like I said, these are powerful books. I haven't read, the first two, but this one here, The Commerce of Trust, already, like I said, makes me feel like going and reading those two as well. So please, let's support each other. Because when we're talking about trust, it also starts from actions like this. Our brother, put the time to think about, okay, how can we help our continent to move forward? How can we develop Africa? And he put all those great ideas into his books. So let's support him. I will put the links in the description. If you want to buy, one of the books, then you can just click on that and go to buy it. So once again, Kabbalah, thank you very much. So if there are people watching today, Kabbalah, because you strongly focus on communicating to the millennials, so what would you like to tell them today before leaving them?
Well, I think the same thing that I said that Frantz Fanon told us: every generation must discover its mission and fulfill it or betray it. So, not fulfilling your mission, you are living a life that is less important than the life of a cow. So, we have to be human again. As the Queen said, the Western society has taught us to live like a less human. But I think we need to teach ourselves to be human again. And one of the ways of teaching ourselves is to try to read ourselves, read stories or books that have been written by ourselves. So, well, discover your mission and fulfill it, or betray it is your choice. But for me, I've chosen to fulfill it for the better of Africa. So thank you so much, Queen. I'm very much pleased to be on your show today. And I know, by the way, I didn't mention this, but I know that you are a poet. I've listened to some of your poems, and I was delighted. You are doing a great job. And I think the synergy that we are creating around the topic of African liberation, you can do it in a poetry way. Others are doing it in a revolutionary way on streets. Others are doing it in parliaments, like the Captain Traore in Burkina Faso. Others are doing it in a music. But at the end of the day, we don't have to forget the focus. Africa must be liberated. There are two tendencies in Pan-Africanism today, or in a struggle today for African liberation. There are those who speak about African liberation, but they only want is to have access to the table, to the dinner table, to eat with the white men, or to eat with those who are plundering the resources of Africa. But there are others who don't want to ask for access to the table. They want to overturn the table so that they can make the
Yeah.
conditions even for all the people, so that all the people can benefit from the resources of the land. Those are us, and that job is not easy job. It's called revolution, and we are on for that. So you got to identify your mission, and you have to choose whether you want to fulfill it or whether you want to betray it, as many of us are doing now. So thanks so much, Queen. Peace and blessing.
Thank you once more, Kabbalah. So, guys, please like, subscribe to the channel to support us. And if you feel that this content today is going to be of value to anyone else that you know, please do share with them. So, once again, thank you, Kabbalah, and hope to have you back on the podcast again.
Thank you, Queen. Peace and love. See you next time.